Hi everyone, my name is Tim Ward from Bid and Research Development. I was due to be with you today, but unfortunately I am actually moving house. So rather than not show up or not do it at all, I thought it would be useful to create a short video to give you some hints and tips, the type of things that I would have been talking about if I was there in person. So the aim of today is I will try to give you as much value as I can, try to give you some real practical hints and tips based on my real life experience, which will help you improve your bids, your submissions, your proposals. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself first, and then I'll get into straight into the content. So I have a bid writing consultancy called Bid and Research Development. We've been going for 5 years. We specialise in supporting mainly private organisations to win contracts. Those contracts are primarily with local authorities, NHS, housing associations, but we do cross over into grants and business cases and submissions. We've done some work with organisations such as Durham University. We've worked with organisations that are putting together business cases to gain funding for new projects, the type of things which will be similar to the things I would imagine that you'd be looking at yourselves. So we're a small team based in the northeast of England of researchers, writers, and over the last 5 years we've won £2.85 billion worth of contracts. So I'll dive straight into the content. So usually at this point I would be asking people what type of things they're bidding for, and trying to get an idea of how I can tailor the content to be useful to you. So I've tried to just create something which will be useful to as many people as possible. So the first thing I would say is particularly for grant submissions and research submissions and where you're pitching for funding, there's a lot of pots of funding out there, but I think it's important that you pick the right pot of funding. It's very easy to see, oh, there's a big pot of money, I'll go for that, when it doesn't actually fit with what it is you want to deliver, or what it is you want to do, what it is you want to research. So I would be quite selective. Don't try and fit a square peg in a round hole, as they say. Make sure you're matching the project and the funding in the right way. And I would say that if you're unsure, get in touch with the funders, ask them that question. I think there's no harm in approaching them and saying, this is what I'm hoping to do. I think it matches with maybe part of your specification of what you're looking to fund. What do you think? And they're usually quite willing to actually engage with you, give you some feedback, give you some thoughts. So my next point is actually to talk to the funders. So even if you think, yes, this is for me, I would say it's worthwhile getting in touch. When it's a pot of charitable funds or research funds, I think there's much more, they're much more at ease with engaging with you and helping you to develop something that helps them maximise the use of funds in the most appropriate way that aligns with their priorities. So get in touch. Organisations like Big Lottery or Paul Hamlin or Esme Fairbairn, if you get in touch with organisations like that, they are usually very willing to talk to you, to give you an idea of, or if you bid within these funding brackets, it would be looked upon favourably. They'll usually tell you some information about how it's marked, who's marking it, if it's marked by a panel, who sits on that panel, what type of priorities they have. Don't be afraid to ask as many questions as you possibly can. Even meet with them maybe and go through your project. I think that can be really beneficial. I think that upfront work can help you to put in a better submission, to align better with funding, and importantly not to waste your time. So we talked about picking the opportunities. It's very easy to go after lots and lots and lots of different pots of funding, but it's much better to maybe find 2 or 3 that align really well with what you want to do, and spend a bit more time, engage with them, make sure it's suitable, and to put your efforts into that type of submission, that type of opportunity. So I'll now move on to when you're actually putting the submission together. So it's, from my experience, it can be a bit of a challenge when you're so close to a project or so close to an idea to actually step back, look at what they're asking for, look at what the questions are, look at their specification or their marking guidance, and to align something with what they want. Because you'll have usually a very clear image of, this is what I want to achieve, this is what my research has been going, this is the type of project I've been working on. But this isn't so much about you, this is about them. It's about playing up to what they want to get what you want, if that makes sense. So if, for example, it says in 1,000 words, explain to me what your proposal is. Just give me a summary of your proposal. Now, you might think, oh, I've got a summary of my proposal. I could just pop that in. That's tempting. But actually, look at what their priorities are. What are the key objectives that they want to achieve? What do they want to do with their funding? And try and build a structure for your response based upon their priorities and what they're asking. So when I say build a structure, what I mean there is you can put some key headings in. So you can use headings based upon their priorities. You could even list out their priorities of what they want to achieve, and you could write a small paragraph underneath each. If you build this structure, you can then work out, right, how much am I going to write in each section? Okay, so maybe 200-word introduction, 100 words on that priority, 100 words on that one, 100 words on that one, and then a small summary at the end. So that you can prepare in a way that makes sure you are meeting everything that they're looking for whilst explaining your project. They are looking for their priorities, not your priorities. You've got to make your priorities match their priorities, and ultimately convince them that it's worth giving you the funding, that you're going to do something worthwhile which also meets their objectives. So that approach of building the structure can save you a lot of time. I think from our experience, we find that a lot of people jump straight into a question and get writing, and then if you've got something like 1,000 words to respond, you end up going off in tangents. It's very hard to stay on topic for 1,000 words. The structure keeps you focused, and we have an approach that we use. So underneath each of those key headings, we try to structure our approach even further. So priority might be to support research into a certain area, for example. So you say, yes, we will support research in that area. But then move on to, so you said, yes, we can, then this is how. So we'll do that through this, and this approach, using this resource, this expertise, these facilities, maybe these partners. And then the third part of it is, well, how do you know that's going to work? So this is where you talk about maybe something you've done before, maybe some pre-work, maybe you've put together a business case and you've got some statistics as to why that type of research is important or why that approach is best. So under each heading, you've suddenly got, yes, we can do that. This is how we're going to do it. And this is why we know that's a good idea. Or that approach can very quickly build up large chunks of text that are relevant, aligned to their priorities, but you're not just saying, this is what we'll do, this is what we'll do, this is what we'll do. You're giving them confidence because you're saying, this is what we'll do and this is why we'll do it. You're giving them that confidence that it's not just something you fancy, it's not something you've plucked out of the air, it's something that you've done some research in, the approach is proven, or you have a very good indication that the approach will be successful based on research and pre-work. Because anyone could write a submission that says, yeah, we'll do that, we'll do everything you want. But it's that last bit that gives it the credibility, that turns it into something real, something tangible. So another thing that we come across regularly, and this isn't just in grants and research submissions, this is everything from bidding for a contract to collect your recycling, to bidding for a contract to build new houses. That is that every organisation, every company, every individual has their own acronyms, their own things that they know about that are for their sector, where people outside of your circle wouldn't have a clue what you're on about. And when I say this, most people nod and can think of a huge list of things which they are familiar with, which the outside world haven't got a clue about. So when you are putting together a submission, you've got to think about that, because these people aren't in your circle. They might have a good idea, but you can't assume that they will. You've got to make things simple. You've got to write it in a way so that the average person on the street can pick it up, read it, and understand. So my test is always, if I write something, I think, if I give that to my mom, or if I give that to someone on the street who doesn't know anything about this, could they read it? Could they think, yes, I know what they're on about, I know what they want to do, I know how they're going to do it, and I've got some indication that they're credible, and I've done some research and justify why they're going to do it in that way. So try and keep it simple. If you are going to use acronyms, you've got to explain what it is and where it comes from. Unless there's a very technical specification, it's very specific, and they use lots of acronyms, you can use things that they've already used. But if they don't, you've got to take that approach. The way things tend to be marked is they don't always go straight to an expert in your field. Usually any submission is initially reviewed by, it might be a procurement administrator, it might be a grants administrator, who'll be looking for the key things of, is this a compliant submission? And looking to tick those boxes to make a recommendation that it's reviewed in more detail by someone else. That might be a case of, if they ask for certain things, certain accreditations, beginning, if you haven't got those, that administration person would rule you out, and you might not get a full review. So the people, you've got to assume the people reading it know nothing about you, even if you've worked with them before. And one of the most common mistakes is in tendering and in submissions is people who hold a contract assume that the organisation know things about them, and they'll bid for a contract and they'll not win it on the basis that they haven't put it down on paper. If it's not on paper, you can't be marked for it, you can't be scored for it. So don't make assumptions that they know anything. Don't make assumptions that they're going to go on your website and Google you and find something out about you that adds some credibility to your bid. You've got to give that to them. You've got to put it on a plate. You can't give them something and think, oh, they'll find out more if they want to, because you know they're not just marking yours. They might have 10, 20, 100, 200 submissions. So if it's not on paper, they're not going to go looking for it. So put it in front of them, make it as easy as possible. So I'm just going to jump back a step there, because there's something that else which I think is of value to mention. So I mentioned writing to the specification. So if they've got a list of priority outcomes that they want to achieve, and you're writing to them, another thing to think about is, if you're going to write how you meet those priorities, write them in the same order that they'll list them, because that person marking it probably has a marking criteria that's written in the same order as their specification or as their guidance. If you answer point number 1, but then you answer point number 7, then you answer point number 5, that's putting a barrier in the way of them giving you a point or giving you a score, or ticking the box to get you through to the next stage of the review. So work to their guidance, work to their structure in building your own structure. If you are that person reading the submission, imagine you've got your stack of 20, 200 submissions, whatever it might be, and you pick it up and you look at the document and you, oh, there we go, they've answered the first one, yes. Oh, and they told me something that makes it credible. Oh, there's the second point, there's the third point. That makes it easy for them. If they go, there's the first one, and then they go, oh, that's not the second one. They've got to cross-reference and they're looking backwards and forwards. That's putting up barriers in the way of actually giving you points and helping you score if it's a scored process. So one thing as well which we find really important, especially in things which are often quite complex, which we find that research submissions can be quite complex. You know, it's usually a very niche area or something that's not been explored massively, and it can be hard to get it across in a way which is easy for the average person to understand. So I would say, don't be afraid to share it. Don't be afraid to ask other people to read it. So give it to your mom, give it to your friend who knows vaguely what you do but doesn't really understand it, and ask them to take some time and read it. So, but then there's something that's quite important when you ask them to read it. So the main mistake people make when you pass them a document like that is they'll read it and they'll give you it back and you go, how was it? And they'll go, oh, there's a couple of typos, I've changed them. Now, typos aren't the thing that's going to be the difference between a successful submission and an unsuccessful submission. It's content. So when you're asking other people to read it, you're asking them to read it and look at the content. What is the content? Do I understand the content? Does it make sense? Is there something missing? Do they read it and think, oh, well, why? Or what does that mean? Or how are you going to do that? And you're asking them to mark it in a to review it in a certain way. If they've got any doubt about any section of what you've written, you've got to ask them to come back to you and say, I don't understand this. This isn't explained very clearly. That's what you're looking for from a review. You don't need them to come back and say you missed a full stop, because you'll probably pick that up yourself in the final review. If you don't, Microsoft Word probably will. So reviewing and sharing is important. I think sometimes people get a bit precious and they spend so much time and effort that they get scared of getting that kind of feedback, or they'll get feedback from someone else in their field who also understands it already, but it's outside of that circle that you can get the most value from a review. So you're going to inevitably review it yourself. Try and see if there's a marking criteria. Quite often there is. Sometimes it'll say an excellent response looks like this. It explains this, it meets our objectives, and it adds some significant value. So try and read what you've written and review it against that if you've got that type of criteria. If you've done that pre-engagement and you've got those relationships with the funder, maybe bring them up and say, I've got a draft, could I share it with you? Sometimes they'll say yes. It's worth asking. If you don't ask, you don't know. But it's definitely worth trying, because it's quite often with grants and funding, it's in their objective to get submissions and that are good quality, that meet their requirements, and to fund the right project. And if they can help you do that, then quite often they're willing to do that. But when you're reviewing it yourself, the questions you want to ask is how, why are we doing that? How are we doing that? What might other people be thinking when they're reading your submissions? And don't be afraid to ask for support. Reach out to people like myself. We regularly will say, oh yeah, we'll have a look at something for you. And I think it's important not to be too precious about what you've written, and to remember that actually feedback is good. If someone says that's rubbish, that doesn't make sense, that is good, that's what you want, that type of feedback is constructive, that type of feedback is going to add value, it's going to mean that you change it. It's much better that you hear it from someone that's reviewing it beforehand than hearing it from the actual funder once they've marked it and said, that section's rubbish, you didn't score very well. Much better that someone does that beforehand. You change it, you refine it, you might even rewrite it completely. You might give me a call and say, I'm struggling with this section, help me with a structure. And yeah, so take criticism positively. You want criticism before you submit. Criticism before you submit is much more valuable than after you've submitted. But my next point is criticism after you've submitted. Get feedback. So don't just get feedback if you don't win or you don't get some funding. Get feedback even if you do. And try and understand why you've got that feedback. You know, do you submit something hoping to score 100% in every area to get maximum impact, get the best feedback you possibly can? But don't be afraid to ask for that. So sometimes you might just get sorry, it's been unsuccessful, we've had a high number of submissions. Sometimes you might get, here's some scoring, this was our marking criteria, you didn't quite make it. Sometimes you might get, you've got it, here's your scores, and your scores are good in every area apart from one where it's average. That average one, why was it average? In the moment, you might just be delighted that you've got some funding, but actually that average section, that's the one that needs to be excellent as well next time, because next time it comes around, you want to get excellent across the board. But it's asking for feedback in a way which can add value. So what could I have done? What could I have said? What examples did others put that give them an excellent score in that section? Don't be afraid to ask those questions. You know, people that are marking the submissions, it's in their interest that you submit good submissions. They don't want to read stuff that's non-compliant or isn't interesting or doesn't hit the point. That's wasting their time. So don't be afraid to say, can I come and meet you? Can I have a phone call with you? Can you provide some more detailed feedback around a certain section? They might say no, they might say yes. We've had occasions where they've said, oh yeah, come and meet us, we'll have a look at it, we'll see if we can help you improve in certain areas. And write down those learning points of what could be done better next time. And I think it's always best to take that approach. So that's probably quite a whistle-stop tour of a few practical things which, from my experience, have been particularly useful. I've probably flown through them a little bit there, but I am more than willing to have a chat with anyone if you've got some real specific questions. I've made some assumptions today that a lot of you will be looking at grants and research funding. It might be that you're looking at public sector tenders, which the approach is a little bit different. It might be that you're bidding to private organisations. Again, the approach is a little bit different. And I'm more than happy to talk to you about that over the phone. I can put together another little video if you've got any future questions, and if you want to collate some questions and circulate them, I can make a little video with some responses to all of the questions and send it around to everyone if it's of value. So don't be afraid to reach out to me with any specifics that you've got. I think one final thought probably on grants and funding type submissions is you have an opportunity to tap into their emotions a little bit and to play on the fact that sometimes it's not just a hard marking criteria of this is good, you got a 10 out of 10. Sometimes there's a bit of a subjective element of it. That's where you've got to become a bit of a salesman, and you've got to think about their objectives and maybe look at the organisation that's putting out the funds and try and tap into some other things on top of what they're giving. Try and pull on some heartstrings if you can, if there is that opportunity. And certainly in the charitable sector, that's something that we look at. But yeah, try and see if there's an opportunity to sway them in that way as well. Okay, so if you want to get in touch with us, you can find me on most social media channels. My name is Tim Ward from Bid and Research Development. We are on YouTube, as you may even be watching this on YouTube. We're on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn's probably the easiest way to get hold of me, or you can email me, tim@bidandresearch.com. But please feel free to reach out, and thank you for your time today. I'm sorry you can't be there with you, but it's Friday night. I'm here in my house packing up boxes ready for a big move on Sunday. Hopefully I can meet with you in the future. So thank you for your time. I hope it's a successful day, and hopefully we'll speak soon. Thank you for watching.